Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and we are back this week. And for the first time ever in our new multi-cam setup with my brother, Austin Douglas. How you doing today, sir?
Fantastic. It's incredible to open up into a new chapter of the podcast. So this is really exciting. Yeah. Proposing new challenges, but we're facing them. Yeah. It's a really good time.
Yeah, last week, right before Para Nationals, the day before Para Nationals at Monsters Met Barbell, hosted by USPC, we had made a trip up to Columbus. We were considering looking at getting some new cameras. We had the capital to be able to invest for another big jump forward in this show for the Impossible podcast and for you guys, our listeners. And we knew we wanted to upgrade to a multicam setup with a switcher view so that you guys can see our beautiful, smiling, lovely faces. And more importantly, our beautiful, smiling, lovely guests' faces in full 4K resolution with cinematic performance from these cameras. So we're excited to be able to offer this to you guys, be able to share this to you guys. And we think it's really going to enhance the production quality of the episode and particularly capture a lot of those moments that are most powerful from our show. Mm-hmm. I'm sure every single one of you guys listening has a moment that you can think of and recall and remember that impacted you so powerfully. And this setup's going to allow us to capture that perfectly. It's also a perfect alignment in the timeline of everything we have planned. Because now that Para Nationals is over, now that the 500-pound squad is fully secure, thanks to the help of so many people last weekend, and we'll dive into some of that. We have a unique experience to be able to move forward and move in a broader and greater direction with some of our messaging, some of our focus, and everything we're trying to impart to all of you who are listening. We are going to be, as I talked about last week and in the lead up to Para Nationals, we're going to be focusing heavily going forward on the 4 domains of performance, how to align those, how to effectively utilize those in your life, how to bring them to fruition, how to strengthen and develop them, and how to pull your highest potential forth, how to create that impossible version of yourself through these domains. They're the domains that have largely driven Austin and I through our journeys, both in battle with cancer and sickness and other life challenges, but as well as many of our athletic feats and everything we chase in day-to-day life. And it's certainly what drove me to squatting 500 pounds as an amputee, cancer survivor, and in the spite of so many of the other challenges I was facing at the time. We'll dive into that here shortly, but we are going to be focusing heavily on these domains going forward because we believe it provides more solidified structure for how to incorporate the lessons and mindsets and approach that we discuss on every episode into your day-to-day life for any passion that you pursue, any impossible that you face. So we believe that that's crucially important to our mission and vision going forward in establishing what we're building at Impossible Performance. And that, along with structuring priorities, holding yourself to those priorities, and figuring out where those passions truly lie. Those are all going to be themes that come up in accordance with these 4 domains of performance. And through all of that, over the next several months and years, we are going to be building a very solidified structure in how to exactly not just become impossible, but to truly build that version of yourself, that stepwise fashion of, okay, it's all well and good that we're trying to build this person, but how do we get there? Mm-hmm. That's what we're going to be building for you guys going forward. And we're very excited to be able to have this new studio set up, to be able to offer you this kind of enhanced, expanded production of the Impossible podcast. And it's a big step for us. We're very excited for it and can't wait to see what it can do for each of you in your own lives. So, with that, brother, Welcome to the new multicam setup.
Yes, welcome everyone. Yeah. So we're really excited to bring this to you and see where we go from here.
Yeah, we spent about 2.5, 3 hours this morning literally just adjusting each camera, trying to get the angles, trying to get the coloring, trying to get the lighting, trying to get everything perfect. And if you guys could see everything from our perspective as far as what's going on behind the scenes here, we've got like multiple studio lights running multiple different colors. We've got multiple cameras with multiple lenses running many different features and angles and zooms and so many different things. But what's great about these cameras we've been fortunate enough to acquire is they are built perfectly for this. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be able to carry us a long time and continue to allow us to enhance the production of the show. But with all of that, let's dive into it. So a couple weeks ago, we discussed the 4 domains of performance. We discussed mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. And specifically, I dove in heavily to how, even though my physical domain faces so many challenges due to amputation, due to the side effects of chemo, due to different diseases and issues my body has faced since then, I realized, for me, it started when I crossed the finish line of my first half marathon. I realized that there is potential that far exceeds anything we would ever allow ourselves to believe. And we all hold that potential within us. And what I realized when I crossed that finish line is that if I can do this, what else can I do? Mm-hmm. What else can I achieve? What else can I make happen? And with the help of so many others, we've been able to build this community, this team now that is constantly busting through these barriers, finding higher and new levels of potential for themselves. And it's a beautiful thing to have the honor to witness. Mm-hmm. And I think all of that has culminated in what was one of my favorite life experiences ever, in witnessing so many displays of becoming impossible and doing the impossible at the Para Nationals meet last weekend.
Oh, absolutely.
So you got to kind of attend the meet and be there, and you were invaluable help to me. It was every time I reached over, needed my headphones, needed salts, needed chalk, whatever I needed, you were right there with it. And that helps a lifter or any athlete performing in any endeavor so much, because it allowed me to really become internal and focus on each of these 4 domains and making sure I'm pulling the maximum potential out physically through utilization of the other domains, which were much stronger that day than my physical body was able to be. Mm-hmm. But what were your sort of initial thoughts and experiences with the meet, just being able to have that kind of more detached perspective of it?
Well, I would say there's certainly a detached perspective, but there's also a connection that I have with everyone that was lifting there, because I've gone through 2 meets myself. I know the nerves that can set in, but you can see that as excitement, the intent to conquer goals that you set 2 months, 4 months, 6 or 8, 10, a year prior to that meet itself. I am very aware of the mindset, the physical readiness, as well as the mental, emotional, spiritual readiness that it takes to go into one of those. And so on the microscopic level, on the micro, I guess we could just say, is that in helping you, it was that being there for you in those moments is something that I would hope for out of someone, which was you both of my meets, was what I wanted to do for you, what you had done for me in the past. Mm-hmm. And so that was mission 1, was making sure that you had, headphones on and off, that you had mouthpiece, belt, all that stuff. And then that you could stay focused on the task at hand. I know even for this meet that the squat was the biggest lift for you and the biggest goal that you had in terms of priorities. We still had a mission to accomplish for the entirety of the meet. And so I wanted to be there for that, and I wanted to make sure that you were just able to focus on that. And having the experience prior of competing at these meets, I have somewhat of an idea of what you need and when you need it. And between the experience of myself and just also knowing that you and I are very similar in our approach, especially mentally when it comes up to getting ready for the lift, when you're, 4 lifters out, 3rd up, 2nd up, you're up next, kind of the process of that, how fast it can go, really. You want it to kind of go as slow as possible, because there's always that one part in the song that you want to try to hit right before you get up, and you could spend a lot of time being worried about that, and little moments like that are going to be up to the lifter. But if I can make sure that I'm there with your belt, with the ammonia, with that kind of stuff, that way when you're like, all right, ammonia, bam, not right there, don't hit the mic, ammonia right there, and then belt right here, okay, let me put that on, headphones off, walk up to the podium, having the experience, but also you and I just being very similar in our approaches to getting onto the podium in terms of just rhythm. That is me taking the difficulty of not being prepared, maybe in some way or some fashion. Just obviously I try to be as helpful as possible, and that's the really cool part. That's because I'll get to the moments of experiencing everybody else lifting, but in terms of you going up for that first attempt to 500, your second lift for squat, certainly not going to say that you weren't ready for it, but I could tell that there was a lot of emotion pouring out of you, and I think it was maybe a little too heavy on the emotion side, because I could see as soon as you got up underneath that bar, you were ready for it, but at the same time, I could tell that it was just like maybe a lot of emotion was charging that to where, and that's why I started to yell like focus at you. I know you didn't hear me, but but I was trying to yell it because I could tell you were just like, so you were really, really, really worked up, not maybe overly worked up, but very worked up emotionally, and I was just like, all right, I know it's going to go well no matter what happens, but I really hope that he hits this. And but then to see you prepare and be ready. I mean, you were calm. One, obviously we had an amazing, I know we've said this before, but we can continue to say it, and it needs to be said again and again and again, is that we had an incredible spotting team there at the meet itself. So, none of us were concerned as if something unfortunate were to try to occur, that it wasn't going to be that bad, for peace sake. And the bar came forward, you went forward, it was caught, taken right back up immediately. And once you came out of that feeling very light on your feet, and you were just like, all right, yeah, we're ready for the next one, I'm fine. Everything's fine, let's go. Then I knew that the third attempt, your second attempt at 500, was going to happen. And to walk up with you, to the dust bowl or the chalk bowl, just being up there with you, watching you prepare for that, you went into it so much more calmly, but just a lot more focused. And as I think that first attempt was just good to kind of get the emotions just out a little bit, expel some of the maybe bubbling over. But as soon as you went up for that third attempt, it was just, I knew it was money. And to be right there, screaming so loud that, I mean, it was this past Saturday, and my voice is pretty much recovered since then. But that was it was an honor to witness that in person, to see the amount of work, the trials that you've had to go through over the past few years of really making this goal apparent to all of us. Maybe it was, within you for a while, but definitely when you said, I just, you want to hit something really, really big in squat. And then 500 came out, and then it just, seeing all of that culminate into this one moment. And on that third attempt, you were able to focus that in and ultimately deliver with, on our end, looked a little bit of ease. I know on your end, it was not, maybe not so easy, but you didn't have a catch. You went from point A to point B and right back up. Yeah. So it was really cool to witness that. But then on the macro level, witnessing everybody else at the meet and seeing the entire para or adaptive flight that we had put together really stood out for me in terms of every single meet that I had seen prior. There were only a few adaptive athletes that I've seen, and when I say a few, I mean like 2, 3, maybe 4 other than yourself that have performed within the rest of the entirety of a meet that is just filled with able-bodied lifters. And so it's just, it's incredible to see that, and it's like kudos to them for having the guts to put themselves out there like that and to get out there and to compete. But then having it culminate into this, para nationals or adaptive flight, an entire flight of adaptive lifters. I mean, that was such an incredible and huge step that we were able to take in the world of powerlifting. And I think, and I feel, and I know, and I believe that what occurred August 23rd needs to be felt to the very far reaches of this world, because it's incredible to see, coming from a world prior to knowing you, I would never have guessed to have seen, somebody in a wheelchair get up there and bench, bench at all, let alone 1, 2, 3, 4, 500 pounds, whatever it gets up to, especially in the Paralympics. But for them also to get up there and do seated deadlift, to see the reaches of adaptability that we can have, and then to see someone with one arm single arm bench press 200 pounds. What? So having that experience, I think, again, on the macro level, was in the moment just incomprehensible. You were witnessing it and trying to soak it in, but and absorb the power that was being put on display. But at the same time, on that day, honestly, it was very difficult to really take in everything that was occurring, because there was so much again, power, but also power on display, but vulnerability on display as well. And to see that vulnerability just set to the side for a moment, and to be treated like able-bodied lifters on a platform with the force that was behind them, aka USPC and Monsters, coming together to say, well, we're going to have the right equipment for you. We just need you. Get up there and lift. Having all of that come together for an entire meet, and to see them absolutely kill it like they did. They and to respect to all the able-bodied powerlifters that were there that day, everyone did an absolutely incredible job. They really pushed it, and we had a lot of white dots that day, and it was incredible. It's always incredible to see that, obviously, seeing people hit their marks, hit their numbers. But for me, that day was for seeing the adaptive lifters come in and just wipe the floor with any sort of cultural or societal pressure and unnecessary sort of ignorance. Just it was left at the door. They came in, they saw and they conquered, and they ultimately were doing the impossible by being impossible on that day. And that was seeing that not only in you, which I've seen before, and it's an honor to see it, but to see an entire entire flight means that hopefully, again, as it reaches further and further and further into the realm of social media and internet and everything, hopefully what that means is that into the future it grows, and it grows rapidly, because it needs to because we know for a fact that there are a lot more para and adaptive lifters that want to get on the platform, don't have the platform to do so. And that's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to provide, and that's what we're here to ultimately offer them, as a chance to show how great they are.
Yeah, I agree 100%, brother. And it's interesting hearing that whole side from your perspective, because now that I'm sitting down thinking about it, I don't know that we've really talked about the meet hardly since it wrapped up. It's just been go, like that's done, next thing. Yep. Which is pretty much how we operate in general, and we believe it's a good way to operate. But there's a lot of things I picked up on there that I really, really liked that you mentioned. I guess maybe working in kind of reverse order. You're 100% right about the adaptive athletes. And we actually talked about this a little bit on Jared and Shira's episode. But what was so cool about that day is it wasn't just, oh, let's bring all these disabled people out here and just make them feel really good because they're trying. Like, no, these people were freaking badasses.
Yeah, they were competing.
Like, they were incredible athletes. The heaviest squat and the heaviest heaviest squat and the heaviest deadlift of that day was done by an adaptive athlete amongst 2 flights of able-bodied athletes. And that's not to say anybody's better than anybody else, but these were incredibly strong athletes. Strength of physical body, even though they face disability, strength of emotion, mind, and spirit especially. And every single person went up to that platform and didn't just, give it their best go. Like, they did things that nobody even knew was remotely possible. And that's why I'm still like riding the high of that meet. We were talking about it on a coaching call with Curtis, and they were talking about how, that post-meet depression that can kind of come where you work so hard for this one thing for so long, and then you have that meet and it's an amazing experience, but then the next few days you're like, well, what do I do now? And that's something we've talked about several times on the show, but it's kind of like, how do you combat this lack of purpose, this question of what's next, or what if? And I'm still riding the high from that meet over a week later now, because every single lift that came up to the platform, it was that same energy, that special energy that enters a room when something impossible is about to happen, when somebody's facing something impossible, when they become impossible under that pressure, under that weight, and when they do something impossible. There's a lasting energy or aura or whatever you want to call it that enters the person, enters the people who are there to witness it, enters the entire room, and it doesn't go away very easily. And that's why we're working to bring that to as many people as we possibly can, as much as we possibly can, because we know what it's done for us in our own lives. We know what it can do for everybody, and we got to experience that so many times, because like you said before, in some of the meets we've done before, it was like me and maybe Jeff and maybe Arlen there, you get to see some really cool stuff, but this time it was like every single lifter that stepped on that platform was doing unbelievably crazy stuff. And that was just, it was just so freaking cool to see. Like, not only are we bringing these adaptive athletes out to this event, out to this platform, and giving them a chance to come out and compete and participate in the sport they've trained for and love, but they're actually like defying the odds of reality in the process. They're coming out and setting impossible standards and achieving unbelievable goals. They're not just out there to feel good and get a pat on the back. They're out there to change the fabric of reality, or at least our perception of it. And my favorite part was that each of those athletes, all understood each other so deeply in one common connected way. Most of us had never met before, but we instantly became so close in sharing that platform. That often happens in the sport of powerlifting. And just the human spirit in general. Anytime you share a common extreme challenge, you're going to relate to somebody on levels that you never would have otherwise. Mm-hmm. But in this particular case, it was never spoken, but I think we all understood the mission we were there to do. And it was an honor to get to be a part of that group, to be able to bring that forth. And in a way, it really reinforced the message we provide of your potential is your responsibility. I think every athlete knew that there that day on the platform. And they not only satisfied that responsibility, they far exceeded it. And we are going to have many of those athletes on the podcast going forward, because you guys have seen some of their videos, some of the most crazy stuff we've ever seen on the powerlifting platform. And it was truly a spectacle to witness. And I've heard similar remarks from everybody that was there that day. But you started by talking about the 500-pound squat itself. And it's really interesting to hear your remarks on it, because what you perceived from it, I think, is a lot of what I felt directly internally myself. You know, I'm not usually a very so I separate anxiety and nervousness. Nervousness I view personally as more of kind of like a negative feeling, like I'm afraid to do something, and I really don't want to do something, and I'm like trying to delay something. When I get anxious, it's generally a very excited feeling. Like I want it to be here. I want to do it. I'm ready for this. I'm ready to perform. And that's how I started really feeling 2-3 days out from that meet. And Friday got really bad. I was like, after weigh-ins, I'm like, man, I just need to go and do it. You know? And barely, I was in and out of sleep all night that night with very lucid dreams. But overall got good rest and recovery that night. The week leading up to it was just full of challenge that we can dive into later, but basically just my physical body reacting in crazy ways, like my muscle breakdown levels shooting through the roof, as they often do, pulling on 17 pounds of inflammation in 48 hours, and having really pitting bad edema from it, working around that, finding out my lactate levels. Even though I hadn't trained for 2 weeks, my lactate levels are double what they were when I was in septic shock in the hospital. So just all kinds of crazy stuff. But it's wild. I was talking to Curtis. It was a day or two before the meet, just kind of putting a game plan together. And I was telling him everything that was happening. And I was just like, you know what? As crazy as it sounds, I know my body's going to come together on meet day. It's going to show up to do what we came there to do. And I'm feeling really good about it. And he responded, he's like, I do too. He had full faith in me as a coach, because, I think we worked together enough at that point to see and to know what I can bring out when I need to through so many of these other domains than just the physical. Mm-hmm. But we go back and we start warming up for squats. And I was actually, that fear that I get when facing squats started very early that morning. But one strength I do have is the ability to control and regulate my own emotions pretty well. And so I'm feeling this fear and I'm allowing myself to feel it, but I'm really controlling the flow, not letting it get in too intense, not shutting it off completely, just controlling the flow. And I was focusing all morning on just keeping myself so completely cool and calm and rested. And I know that's important for me because of how impaired a lot of my recovery mechanisms are. If I get myself worked up and very cortisol driven and very sympathetic mode hours in advance of even the performance, then I'm going to mess myself up the whole day. So I focused heavily on just keeping myself calm, cool, and controlled, and I knew I'd be able to flip that switch when I needed it. So we go back in the warm-up room, warming up on squats. Things were feeling really good, the weights were moving really well, but I was having this issue where I was leaning and driving myself forward. which I hadn't experienced for many, many, many weeks toward the end of that prep. And it was kind of a new, unique thing. It was something I used to do way back when. We fixed a lot of my form issues, and I didn't have that issue anymore. Mm-hmm. Well, my back was still locked in exactly where we needed it to be. I'm staying straight and up and tight under the bar. All that's looking good. But for whatever reason, I'm kind of like falling forward. And I think I realized it was because of how much inflammation my body took on that week leading up to it. You saw my ankles and my foot. Yeah. Like, it was so swollen, it was ridiculous. That's pretty bad. I think my ankle was not able to fully track forward because of how much inflammation there was. So it was kind of making my upper body compensate and lean forward to account for that shift in weight. And so that was
after you kept hitting the monolift bars, or the arms or whatever you want to call it. Like after the first time, we were like, okay, stuff happens. And then the second time, and I think it happened a third time as well, we were like, okay, well, you're moving the weight, but
something's happening. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing about it is that's the monolift I'd used all of training, the one I was warming up on. For some reason, I kept coming forward too far and hitting the arms on it as I'm coming up. But
like everyone, the monolift, like the one that you were using, not there are two of them in the practice room there, or in the powerlifting room of Monsters. Not the red one, the white one. It's what you used. And so having that happen, especially, Curtis, I know just from how incredibly intelligent he is, and especially, within the powerlifting world, he caught on that it was not that it was a problem. But I mean, us who had been helping you the entire time during prep was like, oh, what is going on here?
Yeah. And in that moment, there's the tendency, like, if you don't have proper control over your mind and over your emotion, it's going to want to go in this direction of like, what's happening? Something's off. I'm not going to perform today.
The alarms are going off. Yeah.
We are not beginners to this process, though, and we're fortunate to have had many reps of dealing with unforeseen circumstances in the face of incredible and terrible challenge in life. So I just kind of let it roll off my shoulders. The weight's moving good, hitting depth good, like everything's feeling good, everything's locking in, except this one little thing. And I was just able to just let that go, like, it'll be okay. It'll be there on the platform. And I also had the knowledge of knowing how the monolift on the platform is different from the one in the training room, and that those bars can go back significant, almost twice as far as the ones in the powerlifting room. And so I knew those coming up and hitting those bars is not going to be an issue I have to worry about on the platform at all. So I was able to recover from that well, no issues. Went up. I opened with right around 450 pounds, came in, hit that squat, moved really well, felt good, definitely felt the pressure from that weight, but it wasn't anything I couldn't handle. And so, I let myself just kind of taste some of that emotion that I knew I was bringing forth, because I was relying heavily on emotional and spiritual strength where I knew my body was lacking. That's an approach I've taken very heavily in the past. The 462 last December, the 425 where I busted my nose open a little over a year ago in August, and many of the lifts I've done before, very emotionally, very spiritually driven. I go to certain places and certain experiences and certain timelines that deeply and profoundly affect me, and I'm always able to, I don't go there every time, but when I need to, I can flip that switch pretty quickly, and I'm often able to bring out a much higher level of potential than I would have had just physically alone otherwise. And so that was kind of the process I was following. And where I went to for that, so I hit 450 on my first attempt. In powerlifting, you get 3 attempts at each movement. My second attempt, I call 500, which is a very, very big jump for those in the powerlifting community. But we even had a lot of strategy to that. I always open very light on my lifts because my body fatigues very quickly and very easily due to how much muscle breakdown I carry all the time. And so for me, it's never worth exhausting myself or wasting any energy at all on those opener lifts that I know should be secured, should be easy, I should have in the bag. And so I kept very light on that opener, a weight I knew I could very solidly do at pretty much any given time. And we hit that opener. But then I was there to squat 500. I wasn't there to squat 473. I wasn't there to squat 485. I was there to squat 500. And what's funny is I actually had this talk with Curtis, my coach, about 6 or 7 weeks before the meet. And it was at a time where my health was very seriously failing. Training was going very, very rough. I think I was doing like small, like doubles and triples at 385 and like barely getting through those sets. And it's those times where both the athlete and the coach has to wonder, like, how are we going to make it? How are we going to put an additional 125 pounds on this bar and be able to squat that weight? You know, like, how is this going to happen with only 5 or 6 weeks of training time left? And again, I'd been in that position enough before to kind of be able to know and trust in my body and the process we have, and the fact that I do have so much strength in those other domains. But even then, that was testing my resolve a good bit. Many nights I would like lie awake and think, like, how am I even going to make this happen? How is this even going to remotely be accessible to me? And in those moments, I go back to what we rely on so much, and that memory and that knowing and that wisdom of, I've been here before, I can do it again. I've faced impossible challenge before, and I overcame it then. I will do it again. Mm-hmm. And it's sending that message to your body as much as you can consciously control it. That is what will ultimately change the outcome for you. That's what will allow you to not just face these impossible challenges, but build up strength, maybe not physically, but at least emotionally and spiritually and mentally in these other domains that so heavily affect the physical body, but that we so often neglect and don't think about in terms of athletic performance. And so I knew I'd been here again many, many times over, and I knew I would make it happen again. And all I had to focus on was that next training process. Well, then eventually training takes a turn. Once we start down to our heavy singles, I smoke 450 one week, I smoke 473 one week, do reverse bands with 500, and it's like all of a sudden it's there. It's locked in. Yet even I had nights during that time where it seemed like it was totally out of reach, where I questioned, should I even be doing this comp right now? Should I drop out of this competition? Should I give it a break? Should I revisit this goal when I'm healthier? And I tried to give those thoughts as little time in my brain as I could. Mm. And ultimately, if I had showed up to that competition that day and not stepped on the platform, I would have lived with absolute deep regret for it. And so I'm very glad that I was able to overcome those thoughts, overcome those questioning, and still move forward in the process. But what I told Curtis at that time is, I don't want us to think about what's doable for the meet. I don't want us to start looking at other numbers. Like, I am there to squat 500 pounds. I have every intention, no matter what the rest of this training block looks like, I have every intention of stepping on that platform on August 23rd and putting 500 pounds on my back. I don't care if I don't hit it. I don't care if I bomb out of the meet. I am there to put 500 pounds on my back. I'm there to take it to depth, and whatever happens after that will happen. You know, as I've said before so many times, and something I've given so much thought towards since the original marathon. People are known for so many things, but I would love to be known as the man who failed more than anybody else. Not because I was incapable, but because of what I chased was so great. That is something that deeply speaks to me and deeply calls to me, because I know no matter what my body's giving me that day, no matter where it might be failing or where any of the other domains might be struggling, I know that if I can stay strong enough in the certain areas that matter most to me, I can always step up to face that weight, to face that pressure, to face that challenge. Mm-hmm. I may not always be able to overcome it. I may not always be able to beat it. But as long as I have the strength of mind and emotion and spirit and body to be able to put myself in that position with as much strength and resolve as I can possibly muster, that's something I can always control. And that's something I will always do. That's what I did in the original marathon, even though I had every reason that year to drop down and run the half or not even run at all. Mm-hmm. I showed up to run the full marathon. Yeah. And it was JD who got me in that mindset. And it's a mindset I've carried forth heavily ever since. And even when I quit at mile 18, I've actually saved the t-shirt. It's sitting upstairs, and I want to frame it and hang it in the studio someday, because I will never wear that t-shirt because I didn't complete that race. So I've not earned that honor. Mm-hmm. It's just a personal thing that I hold to.
That's understandable.
But I have saved that shirt, and I want to frame it and hang it up here someday. And I've realized when I look at that, it reminds me of my most joyful failure. Never have I failed so greatly, so publicly, on such a large stage. But what's better than that is never have I been so unbelievably happy about it. And it makes me smile every time I look at it, every time I think of it. And so I give all that to say that coming into that second attempt, I knew I wanted to take 500. I wasn't waiting for the third attempt because I also knew that I probably have potential in me beyond 500. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to hit 500 on my second attempt so that I could chase something beyond that, because I didn't want to leave any accessible potential on the table for that day. So I go for 500. And as you said, I allowed myself to go to that emotional spot more deeply than I ever have before. Yeah. And I went there because I think that's what I'd done in the past on the platform. I had always fueled myself so heavily from the emotional and spiritual side of things in those places I go to. And was it too much? I would say probably so. But looking back, I think I almost needed that in a weird way. Not because it was going to help me squat 500 pounds. I needed to live and experience and be that deeply in those spaces that I go to. Mm-hmm. And I needed to put myself in the face of that impossible challenge. And in a weird way, which not a lot of people are aware of, but I know you are, I needed to feel that failure. Not that I wanted to fail. I certainly did not want that. And I put everything I had in that moment into that 500-pound rep. And ultimately, the reason I failed was because I think I got so emotional that it did pull me away a little bit mentally. And I've never put so much intense focus into my form and my setup and my pick before until this meet and this training prep with Curtis. And it's what's opened so much potential to me, but it was something that I kind of reverted back to some of my previous habits. And I still had all my setup the same and everything, but I was maybe, Curtis would know the exact answer, but I was maybe a half inch too far leaning forward when I initiated that squat. And as anybody who's ever competed, really in any sport, but especially in extreme sport like powerlifting, you know that every minute detail, when you are operating beyond maximum capacity, every minute detail becomes infinitely important. Oh yeah. And so, especially when you're doing it on a prosthetic leg, never have I felt so unstable under a weight on that platform with my prosthetic before. And it was purely because of just how much sheer weight was on my back. like my nub was not able to stay solid in the socket. Like there were so many things happening where that's a new threshold of weight, where it is a totally new world in terms of stability. And so when I initiate that squat, I'm leaning forward just a half inch too far, which I was getting driven forward anyway that day from, I believe, was a lot of the inflammation I was facing. And so I get about 3/4 of the way down, and all of a sudden the weight just takes over and it folds me forward. And as you said, squat, spotter, and loader team and that day was just one of the greatest I've ever had. They immediately, I hear Curtis take it, I hear Curtis yell take it, and they all grab it, and it's just immediately lifted off of me. And it's wild watching that video because I remember like how intense the experience was of that moment. Your brain realizes you were under 500 pounds and you were falling forward with it, and there is nothing you can do about it. You are totally helpless to the situation.
That's where you're going, wherever it tells you to go.
Yeah, and in the moment, I'm sure it was tenths of a second, but in the moment, it felt like it might as well have been several minutes. Yeah. I was in that brief period of, I realized I am falling forward, but nobody else quite had yet. So I came up out of that, and weirdly enough, I felt nothing but pure joy. And I still don't know if I've worked out as to why yet. That's something I'll have to keep playing around with.
For me, I think you were so emotionally charged. You could just shake it off.
Yeah.
It happens. You failed. You're like, okay, well, I can still do this. Obviously, the confidence was there prior to that, but I think, like you mentioned too, there is just the emotion. I think your emotions, you resorted back to old habits. The emotion just came ramping through. Because if you watch the video when you get up there too, it's in your face. It is in your
face. Dude, I had tears rolling down my eyes.
You were someplace else. Yeah. You were not checking the boxes like you said. Yeah. And so I think getting that out of the way with the knowledge of, I get one more attempt at this. That I would say is the reason why that you came back ready for that third one. Yeah. Pun intended, I guess, but you got the weight off your shoulders and you were like, okay, we're fine. I'm alive.
Can you believe it?
Right, I'm alive.
It's a miracle.
Spotters got me. Spotters did their job, which we expected them to. And I have a final attempt at this, and I know that I can do it. You did the 490 plus reverse bands. Mm-hmm. Well, 500 with reverse bands. Sorry. 2-3 weeks prior to the meet, yeah. And so we knew that you had it, mm-hmm. And I think in that moment you realized that you had it. It's just, you're a little unfocused, and then coming into the third attempt, you were ready to take off. Yeah, that was apparent.
And I think what I'm realizing now in this discussion is that I don't think I was unfocused at all. I think I was purely just focused too much on not the exact right things to be able to squat 500
that's
pounds.
what I mean. Not in the general sense, but emotions were taking too much of your focus.
And that's why I say I think I almost needed that failed squat attempt. I needed to be able to take myself to that place, because not only was this a heavier weight than I've ever faced before, and that I could have ever imagined myself facing, and something that, to the best of our knowledge, no leg amputee has ever done in competition before. So not only is it a big milestone from that perspective, but it's also a situation where I knew that after this meet, I was stepping back from powerlifting for a little while, at least from the very hardcore competitive, coached and programmed side of powerlifting, because ultimately, as you guys have heard us discuss, we'll dive into later, it's just a lower priority for me right now than so many other things I'm chasing, including this platform, the podcast, Impossible Performance, everything we're doing here. Yet it was something I was putting so much more time and energy and resource into my powerlifting training than it deserved, according to where it falls in priority list. And so I knew this was the last time I was really taking this platform at the very height of strength peaking and conditioning training for that sport specifically. And so I really wanted to leave everything I had out there. And I think, as you know from some of the stories I've shared with you from my time on ECMO and some of the hallucinations I battled, from day one of me stepping into a weight room, the only form of therapy I've found for that is actually effective and beneficial and useful is weightlifting, is training, is specifically lifting very heavy. And I used to be such an emotionally driven lifter. I mean, if you look at the video of my 500-pound deadlift for the first time versus my 500-pound squat, even though I'm working very hard in both videos, they're markedly different videos. I'm very emotionally driven on the deadlift, which happened 5 years ago now, and I'm much less so on the squat. I think it just shows my progression and change as a human, as an athlete, and as a performer. But I think I needed that time to go to that emotional space, which I've not gone to in that level in so long. And to be able to get under a weight and to feel that and to process and work through those emotions. And honestly, one of the biggest fears I had that day was falling under that weight. As you would, as anybody would, but especially as you would with a prosthetic leg. And then it happened, and it's like, oh, I can get through that. That's fine. That's no problem. And so I was able to, because I worked through that emotion, worked through that spiritual energy I was really feeling in that moment, I was able to just kind of turn that down for the next one. And I really felt myself doing it. I went back and immediately sat down and just tried to rest and relax. I was trying to do this between every rep because of how quick the meet was going that day. Just really relax and rest and calm down as much as possible. And the moment that I remembered, and I hoped, when it happened, I hoped I would remember it as fondly as I do, is when I looked at you. It was not long after I climbed out from under that bar and I said, it'll just make a better story.
Yeah. And
that's absolutely what it did. It was right after my second attempt, before my third attempt. I had no idea if I was actually going to end up hitting it or not, but I knew no matter how things went, it would make for a better story. And so I sat back down, got cooled and collected, and got some food in me, got some hydration in me, did those little things that you can do between sets to really set yourself up well. And went back up to it. Somewhere in there, I had a little chat with Curtis, and he was talking to me about, hey, you're just a little too far forward that time. Let's fix that for this time. Mm-hmm. And we know, because we'd seen proof of concept throughout all of my training, if I get a perfect pick, I squat anything that's on my back. Every single time throughout prep, we learned that. If I get that weight picked out perfectly, which sounds like it shouldn't be that hard of a thing to do, but unless you've really been that detailed into the sport of powerlifting before, there's a lot that goes into it. Mm-hmm. And so, hey, you just need to make sure everything's totally lined up, totally good to go. We've done this before. Just do everything, we're trained to do. And Curtis told me everything I needed to hear in that moment, and kind of exactly how I needed to hear it too. So I go up for that third attempt, and again, that joy comes back to me, which that was a totally new emotion for me. As I've talked to you about before, early on in my lifting career, my lifting was very driven by rage and anger and all of these very strong emotions. But I think a lot of it was just I needed to process a lot of that from me having battled cancer at such a young age, having lost my leg, having had all the undealt with trauma of all the hallucinations I'd experienced. I needed that time to really work through a lot of that emotion. And eventually I hit a point where I'd worked through all of that emotion, and I entered this state of kind of I would go to like almost a mournful state when I was under the bar. That's really what you saw on that second attempt. That's what you saw on the 425 last August, on the 462 last December. I would go to this like mournful state where I'm like, I have tears streaming down my eyes. And it's not like a bad or negative emotion for me. It's just this like, you know, sitting with and being with the kid who laid there and couldn't get up after ECMO. He so desperately just wanted to stand up and he couldn't. You know, it was almost a mourning for him and everything he'd gone through. And it was always for me this kind of idea of, you take a rest for a moment, I've got it from here. And I think what I was able to do on that second attempt is I was able to close the chapter of that emotional journey, the kind of mournful melancholy part of my lifting journey. And from that moment on and for the rest of the meet, it was just pure joy is the emotion I felt stepping up to the platform. And that's what I felt coming up to the 500. And that's why you see me so much less emotional, because I'm just so joyful and so excited to be there for the opportunity and the ability to compete, but just I think also in honor of everything I had done for my entire life just to be able to get there. And the fact that knowing that kid who couldn't even stand up back in 2013 to the kid who first squatted 135 for the first time in 2018 to the man that's now stepping up under 500 pounds for the third and final time of his life. It was the joy of knowing the transformation that had to occur for that all to come to fruition. Mm-hmm. And so this time I was able to balance the mental aspect of knowing every little box I need to check off with some of the emotional of feeling that joy and letting that fill and fuel and drive me, with some of the spiritual energy of just knowing that it's kind of that essence of the impossible, knowing this is an impossible situation. This is something I've built a new version of myself to be able to withstand and overcome, and now we get to find out if it's going to happen. As well as everything I'd done to line my physical body up. I think I'd never been so balanced from a lifting perspective in each of the 4 domains. So I get under the bar, and actually I kind of overcompensated. So to keep myself from leaning too far forward, I tried to get my body even further under the bar, get my feet forward further for my initial setup. And I start pushing into the bar a little bit. And I'd even gone to like pick the bar up, and I'm pushing into it and it's not moving. And I realized it is way too far down on my back. Like I'd actually overcompensated. And I probably could have really fought through it and really picked it up. But I realized as I'm pushing harder and harder into it, I'm like, if I pick this bar up, I will not squat it. Yeah. And that wasn't me doubting myself. That wasn't me like questioning it was like, this is a bad pick. You will not squat it. We know how this works. And so that's my brain the mental side was really coming to light and on full display for this particular squat. And so I just stopped what I'm doing, and I actually didn't even know if I was allowed to do that or not. Turns out I could have actually completely come out from under the bar, let go of it, and totally reset and gone back under. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Curtis was trying to get me to do when I watched the video.
Yeah, it was both Curtis and who was the head judge?
I think it was Jared.
Was it Jared? Yeah, I think they both said no, reset. You got time.
And I did not even hear them say that.
You had multiple people going, hey, reset. It's good.
Because I still kind of went to this very, it is weird how when I get under, it doesn't happen in training, but it happens on the platform. It's like everything else in all of existence is shut out. It just goes quiet. And I'm just alone with me by myself, which is a really beautiful thing for me, actually.
That's a pretty awesome skill set to have.
I don't even know if maybe there's some skill there.
I'm working on trying to do that within certain realms of my life, and I have, at least in my interpretation of it, come to find it as a skill set to try to acquire. Because there are certainly times where I'm not going to get on a tangent, but basically when I'm writing, I definitely need to pick very meticulously through the different connections and experiences and memories, kind of like going through a filing cabinet, looking for individual files. Like, I have to do that with very little going on exterior of me. And so that's why, and I think a lot of writers, find this, and other people just in general, just to focus, go to a coffee shop, because it gets very monotonous very quickly. You have the same backdrop, in and out of people.
Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of white noise going on in the background, but nothing too distracting.
And then put headphones in, and if you can utilize it, again, this is why I interpret it as a skill set, is because if you can find the correct music as well, that's able to put you within that realm. And in my world, I have found that, but I had to work on it. Like, it's particular artists. Definitely nothing, vocal driven, unless it's something extremely chorally beautiful. It's definitely, instrumental. And so for me, in my interpretation of having that moment, like your moment on the platform where you go quiet and you don't hear anything, for me, that is a valuable skill set to be able to procure. And it's taken quite a long time for me to be able to have that. And I'm still not to a not good enough point, but to a point of which I feel that I have achieved what I've wanted to achieve. So I would see that as a skill set.
Yeah, it's a really cool, and maybe what it is it's a form of like flow state that you hear people talk about. Which even a lot of world-renowned scientists have discussed and proven and shown that that is a very real, tangible thing, and a very powerful thing that we have at our fingertips, accessible to us. Not that it's easy, but when you can get there, it's very powerful. And I think that's what happens for me. I stare at that knurling, and it's just like everything slowly. It's not like it just shuts off. It's like the volume gets turned down until there's just nothing there. And it's a really, really beautiful place for me. Like, it's a place that if I wish that I could stay there longer, because of just how impactful it is. It's like it sounds wild to say, but it's almost just like reality itself fades away, and I'm just kind of in this workshop where I'm free to just bend things and play around with things and figure things out as I need to. And so I stare at that knurling until that kind of sound, I'm in that space. I get under that bar, and it's weird because it's like I don't even remember feeling the weight on my back. I mean, I remember it, having to push into it. I remember initially feeling that hey, the setup is not correct, and all I needed to do, and I think that's why I didn't get out under the bar, because I felt good about everything else, but I'm like, I need this to be a little higher on my back. I need my rear delts underneath this bar and more locked in more tightly. And so once I did that, I'm like, this is it. Go. And so I didn't give myself time to think about it. I just felt it. This is it. Go. And so you see in the video where Curtis is kind of tapping my side, which I did not feel that either. He's like, dude, come, get out, reset. Yeah. And I did not feel that. I did not hear any of that. All I felt was, this is wrong. Small adjustment. This is good. Go. And you see, as soon as I lock in that position, I stick my chest up.
Yeah, you didn't take long.
And I push, and I feel that weight on my back. And again, it's just this pure joy exuding from me. And I come down, and I start coming down, and I'm feeling this weight, and I hit that halfway point, and that's when I realized, I'm going to squat this. Because I wasn't being driven forward like I had been before. I was coming down, down, down. I hit that really crucial point of you're either going to fall forward or you're going to sink into it. And I feel myself past that and keep sinking into it. And so I go down to where I feel like I've got good depth. And it's weird for me because the depth is almost never an active decision for me. It's just like a point where my body hits and I'm like, I'm there, go. And sometimes I'm actually there, sometimes I'm not. On that particular day, thankfully, I was there.
Oh, you were. There's no doubt.
And the only other thing I remember is I'm coming down as I started. And this is where it's interesting because it's always been this me alone by myself. But there were a couple moments where throughout this entire squat where some things did cut through. And what's weird is I didn't hear Curtis tell me to reset. I didn't feel him tapping my side. All of that was totally shut off. But as I'm coming down, there's a point where I start coming down, and you can see it in the video. I remember hearing it on the platform. Curtis says, "There it is." And that's like, as I'm about a quarter of the way down, he says, "There it is." And then he starts saying, "Push out, push out, push out," which is his little cue to like trigger me to push my knees out, which is, I'm not actually like physically pushing my knees out as far as I can.
It's just they don't collapse.
Yeah, it's a cue that we use in powerlifting to think about push out. If you just think push out with your knees, they're not going to fall out because the weight's so heavy, but it just keeps them from collapsing in. It's a cue to like think of the opposite thing of that you want to happen. And so that came through. I heard push out, push out, push out. I'm like, oh yeah, let me do that. And the more I push my knees out, the more stabilized I feel under this weight. And I hit the bottom and I start to come back up. And there was never really a point on the video where I was like extremely physically struggling with it. But I remember being under that weight and it was like a whole new world to me. I was like, I have never attempted something like this before. Even the marathon, every other lift I've done in competition, whatever it is, I've never worked that physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually hard for something in my life. Even though the coming up takes 2 or 3 seconds, I've never put that much complete focus and energy and work into anything in my life. And I remember I'm like coming up and I'm not even questioning if I'm going to make it or not. I'm just like push everything into this. Give absolutely everything. That's all I'm focused on. And at one point I'm like halfway up and I'm like, how freaking cool is this? I've never worked like this for anything else in my life before. And I get to where I get it up and I lock it out, and it's funny because you see it on the video. It's like my whole face just like, it's like everything releases. And a lot of people have asked me about it because it looks like I'm in pain or I'm crying or I'm upset or something. And it's weird to explain to people, but it's not that at all. It's literally me just returning to reality, coming out of that state. And I, for a little bit, I come back to consciousness and I didn't even believe that I just did it. Like, it's weird. It's like, there's no way that just happened. And that's what that face is reflective of. It's just like, yeah, it's just like, holy shit, what just happened? Like, I'm alive. I'm up with the weight. Nobody picked it up off of me. What just happened?
Yeah.
And it's just me coming back into that full reality. Because as I'm coming up, the other two things that cut through was I hear you screaming and I hear Heather screaming. And those are the only other two things. Those two things, and I heard Curtis yelling, push out, yeah. You know, and that's all I heard until like I get it up, and then all of a sudden I'm like, it's like I release it and everything comes back, and I'm like, what just happened? And then, you know, they swing the arms and I put the bar down, and like Curtis starts patting me on the back, and I like am just kind of like having that emotional moment as you do after something like that, of just like all these years of work, like 3 years of active training, 8 years of total training for just that lift specifically, but then the decade and a half of mental and emotional and spiritual work that it took to be able to do that, since it's just like overwhelming emotion. I kind of fist bump the bar, which is something I've become accustomed to doing, just like in a thank you. I think that's more of what it is, like a feeling of gratitude, just like thank you for that. And then I like turn around and I hug Curtis, and I remember I'm stepping off the platform and I'm asking Clayton immediately, I'm like, was that actually good? Like, he's like, yes, it was good. Yeah. And I'm walking off the platform and I'm asking you, I'm like, but really, like, was it good? And then I go up to Tim, because for some reason I like could not get myself to believe it. And I go up to Tim Koshorik and I'm like, I need you to tell me if that was good or not. So, because I know Tim is gonna give it to anybody exactly how it is.
He'll let you know.
Yeah, he will not tell you what you want to hear. He will tell you exactly how it is. And which is something I really respect in him. And so he goes and watches the video and he comes back. He's like, that was honestly one of the deeper squats I've seen you do on the platform. And so once he signed off on that, I'm like, okay, you can start to believe that you just did that.
Yeah, he didn't like the red X. So he wanted 3 whites.
Yeah. Hey, I actually went up to that judge, Melissa's her name, and I thanked her later because I was like, thank you for judging me fairly. And she's like, honestly, the only reason I gave you that X was because I've seen you go deeper. I know you can go deeper. And I was like, I appreciate that. I know I can too. And we'll keep working on it. But I'm really glad and thankful for the judges. We had, we talked about the spotting and loading crew, but we haven't really talked about the judges. We had Melissa, Jared, and Clayton, all 3 very experienced judges and perfect for the para meet because they were all able to take each athlete's individual nuance and what they'd seen them do before, what they know they could do, and base their judging purely off of that, which was, and hold them to the strict, fair standards of the sport in general. And that was really, really cool to see them. Again, they're not just throwing whites out for everybody just as we want you to feel good. We want you, but they're giving them actual, fair, honest, strict judging. And the athletes, because the athletes don't want that.
Like they need that.
Yeah.
They need that.
And I didn't want that. I don't want any white that I don't earn. So it was a big deal to me to have them there judging us and holding us to those standards we know we can hold. But yeah, after that squat, and pretty much every moment since, it's just, even though there's been a lot of physical pain involved right. recovering from that, it's just pure joy
and elation
for that experience. Yeah. And that's why, I mean, you know that feeling. Like we've both faced this enough times and overcome this enough times, whether it's athletic performance or otherwise or personal health challenge. That's why we're so dedicated to spreading this mission and building this vision that we have. Because we know how powerful that experience, that essence is, and what it can drive you to subsequently do going forward. And we don't just view it as a mission to give that to as many people as possible. We view it as our active responsibility, not just to bring our highest potential forward, but to bring the highest potential forward of everyone around us. And it's such a cool opportunity to be able to do so,
because it's what we needed in our darkest times. And so it's not only our duty, but it's also a privilege to offer that to those who may need that. So yeah,
and that's the cool part about it, is you get deep enough in this. And I was thinking about this week, and so I was driving in the car at one point. It's like somewhere along the way you hit this point where you stop seeing people as they are. You start seeing people as what you know they can be. And that, you talk about kind of that flow state, that being alone, entering a different world, as being a very powerful skill set to build. I think that's another very powerful skill set to build, to be able to see people for what you know they can be. And I almost exclusively see people as that now. And it's what drives so much of what we do in working with people in the business. It's what we drive so much of the guests we bring on in this podcast, because every interaction we have with those around us, particularly the people that I see that I know have some of the very highest potentials. Again, it's our privilege, it's our duty, it's our responsibility to do anything we can to help them bring that forth. And I think the best way we are equipped to be able to do that is through further teachings on all 4 domains of performance, but particularly those that are mental, spiritual, and emotional. Because while we talk about mindset, and we talk about motivation, and we talk about discipline, and we talk about all of these very ethereal things that are all well and good, it's like nobody really talks about how do you build that.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of discussion.
How do you get there?
Yeah, for physical, there's all sorts of discussion of, take powerlifting for example. There's progressive overload, there's conjugate, and then there's a million little details in between all of that on the inside. But I have seen so many lifters step on the platform who checked every single box physically, and yet something was not right mentally or emotionally or spiritually, and it caused their performance to suffer that day. And that's nothing against that athlete. Mm-hmm. But we've learned ourselves the hard way a lot of times that if you were not secured and strengthened and developed in all 4 domains, you will not achieve your highest potential. And we believe that so strongly. We've experienced in our own lives. We've seen it in so many other people, not just athletes, but people who perform in so many other areas of life. And so we know the power of what we've been able to culminate within ourselves. And so we've been working very heavily on trying to develop some more structure and some more guideline and some more discussions focused on, okay, well, how do you do this? What I did on that platform for that 500-pound squat, and subsequently what every other athlete did in their impossible challenge that they faced, is accessible to every human on this planet. I truly believe that. May take some more work than others. Some people are going to have different starting points. Some people are going to have different challenges they have to overcome along the way. But at the end of the day, it is fully accessible to every human on the planet. So the question then becomes, how do you get there? How did we get from where we were in some of our darkest days to where we are now? How did I go from not being able to stand up to 5 years later being able to squat 135 to 7 years later being able to squat 500 pounds? Mm-hmm. How did I get here? And I promise you, it was absolutely not from physical prowess or genetic gifts. Yeah. It was from so much that is so much deeper than that. Mm-hmm. And it is the mental, emotional, and spiritual strength. Not that physical had nothing to do with it, because it certainly had a lot to do with it. There's a lot of physical training I had to do to be able to build my body up, not just to be able to handle that, but to be able to actually do it. But my physical body would not have taken that alone by itself.
You have to stabilize the foundation of which you intend to set yourself on in order to reach for the highest potential. Mm-hmm. And that requires work.
Yeah. And there's so many other moments, like with David Goggins' first 100-mile race, Eddie Hall's 500-kilogram deadlift. There's so many other moments in human history where we've seen people pull forth a potential far beyond anything that should be accessible, not just to them, but humanity in general in some cases. And so we've seen these case studies. We know that it can be done, not just in ourselves, but in other people. And it's now our biggest mission going forward to elucidate all of these lessons, all of these pathways, the structure for how do you build an impossible level of strength in each of these 4 domains. And in doing so, you build an impossible version of yourself, somebody who could not or should not otherwise have existed. And once you build that person, they will stay with you always going forward. They will allow you to inevitably do the impossible. And I'm incredibly thankful that that is what was able to happen on the platform last weekend. Mm-hmm. And that person, while he is going to change a lot in a lot of ways going forward, that person will always be with me. And that joy, I think that joy is going to be around for a long time.
Reaching that peak of the mountain that you've been climbing for so long, must be one hell of a view up there.
It was very beautiful. Even the memory of it is still very beautiful. Mm-hmm. But what I'm most excited about now is what's next.
Is the next one.
Yeah. 100%, brother. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to be going forward and moving forward with for you guys and for ourselves, because this is a process we've gotten a good foothold. We've gotten a good foundation for it now, but we're learning every step of the way right along with you guys throughout this whole journey. Yeah.
We're actively doing it.
Absolutely. So we're going to have some really cool guests coming up. We've got some really fun ones on the schedule going forward. Mm-hmm. Each of them their own unique expert in one of these 4 domains, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. We're going to be pulling out a lot of really great lessons from them, and we're going to be discussing it for you guys. We're building structure around this platform. The meat of a lot of the conversation development is going to happen on the podcast here, but we're going to build a lot of structure around it in the form of online courses that we're building through certain video platforms right now, as well as a couple books we have under construction right now through the writing stance. We're trying to make this as accessible as humanly possible to everybody who needs it in whichever way they interpret and learn the very best. Mm-hmm. Because no matter what it is you're chasing, whether you're an athlete or an artist or a producer, or you're building businesses, or you're building skyscrapers, whatever it is your passion is centered around, this message is for you. Everybody who has gone the very farthest and the very greatest, no matter what the discipline is, has faced the impossible. They had to create a version of themselves who is capable of overcoming that impossible challenge. And that is what ultimately led them to doing the impossible. And we can't wait to see how many of you guys achieve that going forward. Mm-hmm. So, with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed the new live multicam experience. We're very excited. I promise we will continue to develop it and make it even better going forward, because everything we're taking in right now is getting put right back into this platform to allow us to grow it and make it as high quality in every aspect as it possibly can be for you guys. So we'll be learning along the way. We'll make mistakes. We'll grow from them. We'll figure things out. And every single day, every single week, every single month, every year, we will continue to build this message, build this platform, and make it better, more accessible, and more impactful for each of you. And as we've always said, the number one way that you can help us in this endeavor is if you got something out of this episode today or any episode we've done in the past, please share it with as many people as you know that you believe it could help. Because at the end of the day, that is how we build, that's how we live out our mission. And that is how we build the vision that we have for the world in Impossible Performance. You guys know we open with the mission of Impossible Performance every episode. And every episode we close with the vision. We've done that since day one, and we will continue to do that for every day that we have the honor to live this path, to chase this journey, and to pursue this impossible. So, with that, brother, do you have anything else for today?
'Tis a very bright day towards an extremely impactful and powerful future, and I wouldn't ask for anything else.
Absolutely, brother. Wonder how that's going to look on the multicam.
We'll find out.
All right, guys, take care. Check out all our links in the bio. These shirts, which we are sporting, will give you each a very beautiful view of them. They say impossible on the front. They're a competition shirt. Limitations do not exist was the mantra we carried into that 500-pound squat. And it's a mantra we will continue to carry going forward. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being a part of everything we do, because at Impossible Performance, we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you for listening. And as always, be impossible.